The Lost Puppy, Stephen began, his eyes reading the dimly lit title of a hardcover children's book. It was thin. The cover contained more bulk than the story it bound, and illustrated with cartoonish watercolor images of a small white dog with brown spots. His audience, the Child King, slumped back in his golden throne as Stephen read the first line. On a small farm in the countryside, a family lived in a cozy house, with a big red barn next to it. Stephen read, holding up the book so the king could see the pictures. Inside the barn lived a friendly little puppy named Thomas. The little boy, only 7 years of age, showed no signs of growing tired, despite the late hour. He hoped and prayed the king's eyes would grow heavy and begin to flutter closed. Holding a fist to his mouth, he coughed unproductively. His mouth was dry, his throat felt raw, and he himself could barely stay awake. Yet it was his job to read to King Tyrannosaurus, and read he would. God, if the kid would just go to sleep, he thought wanly. After finishing the story, Stephen released another dry cough as he tossed the thin hardcover book onto a nearby pile of countless others. Every day at 2 p.m., 2 slaves would knock, say the password, King Tyrannosaurus rules, and haul in multiple boxes packed with cheap children's books. Being read to was the only form of entertainment the king seemed to enjoy, and he was known to indulge in it for days at a time. He attempted to do the math, to calculate exactly how many cases of books he had read to this child over the last 3 days, but found his thoughts too dulled for such an undertaking. His mind was awash in a breezy static, a radio tuned to the lively music of a station just barely out of proper range. Dehydration, starvation. Does 3 days qualify as starving? He pondered the latter briefly. This was also his 3rd day absent sleep. On the first day, King Tyrannosaurus, a title and moniker chosen by the child, had threatened him with death for some nervous stuttering that was littering his readings with redundant, alliterating consonants. Thank God he had managed to pull himself together. On that first day, he had lived in nothing short of mortal terror. For he was a mortal in the hands of a pettish and unpredictable god. He doubted if God was the proper word. The king was powerful, strong enough to seize control of the entire town, but Stephen was certain there had to be limits to what he was capable of. He wondered, as many in the town did, why no outside help had come to their aid. It had been 2 weeks and 1 day since the king had, after slaughtering his own parents, seized complete control. Police wouldn't be able to offer more than new fodder for the child, but where was the military? Surely tanks and missiles could make quick work of him. Though if he believed the rumors whispered among his fellow slaves, the child was nearly omnipotent. Some of the rumors were probably fabrications. One account of him changing the weather had to be. But there were some things he knew for a fact. He knew the king slept only once or twice per week, a bizarre side effect of whatever power he possessed. And he knew the king killed without conscience. He had seen the aftermath, the scraps of gore barely identifiable as human, corpses frozen in ice that never melted, and the other numerous grisly remnants of the child's many tempers. Before this, Stephen had been assigned to help dispose of the victims, He and a crew of 3 others had carted, carried, bagged, or mopped up whatever remains were left. He had seen firsthand, in more detail than any sane person could stomach, the carnage wrought at the hands of their psychopathic young master. Most children are capable of remorseless cruelty, but the king's powers allowed for much more than the simple teasing or hitting that seems inextricably linked with that phase of human life. Whatever his powers, telepathy wasn't among them. Stephen had thought a great many nasty things about the child before him, perched atop the antique chair that the king referred to as his throne. After ordering the piece to be brought from a shop in town, he had commissioned 2 young slaves to, quote, make it gold, end quote. The best they were able to manage was to coat it in gold-colored spray paint. Their work had been shoddy and uneven. Stephen gently, submissively, turned his eyes upward. The child's unkempt black hair had grown to partially obscure his eyes. They were dark brown, and filled with all the energy and vitality one would expect of a 7-year-old. They met his own gaze, an abusive owner scrutinizing a misbehaving pet. "Keep reading," King Tyrannosaurus commanded. "Sir, King Tyrannosaurus, I hope you know that I really, really love reading to you, sir. I just need some water, sir. Please. I promise. I swear. 1 glass of water and I'll get right back to reading your books to you." Stephen made no attempt to sound dignified, and his words spilled out with increasing speed. His tone held desperation, aimed at the heartstrings of an audience who simply had none. "Read the books or I'm going to get a new reader." "Sir, please. I'll read to you for the rest of your life if I could just get some food or some time to sleep." Stephen pleaded, instantly receiving his answer in the form of a severely disapproving expression that looked far too mature for such a youthful face. Every word he spoke risked his life, but he couldn't deny anything was better than a slow death by a combination of dehydration and children's books. At some point, a gradual shift had taken place within him. The terror he had felt days before had melted into a twisted sort of mundane desolation from which he craved escape. Whatever unspeakable punishment the king doled out, it was usually quick. There were exceptions, of course. The woman who had been melted into a red, brown, and green slush. But most were quick. Quick was better than this. Stephen sat, immobile, staring into the eyes of the king. Resigning himself to whatever fate befell him, he took a final breath and waited defiantly for his punishment. The child, seated upon his precious throne, began to stare intensely at Stephen's face. His visage scrunched into one of almost comical levels of concentration, and his entire body stiffened. A headache. That's what Stephen felt, for a handful of seconds. Then, nothing. His brain shut down, mercifully sparing him the sensations that would have followed. As the boy focused, the man's head began to bulge. Blood poured freely from the nose, with his mouth and ears following close behind. His eyes squeezed within their sockets before being ejected. Bone cracked. Skin and sinew audibly creaked, stretching to a breaking point. Stephen's head erupted in a wet burst. its contents and packaging splattered in every direction. Thick, dark blood sprayed onto the nearby walls and drenched the floor. Pink bits of meat and brain stuck to the surface of the closest pile of books. The child's face relaxed, and he slumped back in his throne. He surveyed the carnage, slightly irritated at the mess. "Hey!" he yelled, face turned to the door of his chamber. A series of hurried footsteps thumped nearby, before the door eased open. A young woman meekly poked her head inside the room, looking at the child as if she expected to be immediately executed. "Get the cleaning slaves, and tell them I said to hurry up. I need a new reader, too." The king narrowed his eyes, pausing thoughtfully for a moment. "I changed my mind. I want you to be my new reader." As he said the latter, the king casually flicked a scrap of brain matter from the gaudy arm of his throne onto a floor already covered with similar pieces. Her politely obedient expression never wavered, though, make no mistake, she knew she had just been handed a death sentence. This was the end for her. Her guts churned at the finality of that thought, suddenly feeling leaden. "Sit in the reading chair," the king said, pointing to the heavily scuffed wooden chair that still held the headless corpse of its previous occupant. A brief, questioning look was all she dared. She walked timidly to the chair and gently nudged the shoulder of the headless man. The body slumped to one side, toppling onto the floor like a felled tree. It landed on its side with a thump, and the woman quickly averted her gaze from the bodily fluids that drained from the neck hole. Taking a seat on the blood-soaked chair, she reached for the open box of books and removed one. With trembling hands and voice, she opened the book and read the title. "A good day for the zebra family," she began, stuttering in fear.